Hi, I'm Luke and welcome to Riftbricks. So, what can you expect from this channel? I've been collecting, building and restoring Lego for years, and it's not until now that I've had a space to try and tackle some more ambitious projects. I've been primarily a set builder, but now I want to try my hand at mocks and push my building skills to places that they've never been before. I've set myself a very specific challenge to have a mock ready for Bricktastic 2027. So I hope you'll come with me on the journey as I try and push my building skills beyond that of just being a set builder. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I'm going to push myself to do some creative projects, and I've got a very ambitious one in the pipeline. So I hope you'll follow me and let's get to it. So here's the challenge that I've set for myself. So the challenge is going to be, how do I recreate the spirit of Scalexbric? So I think I've got a few ideas. Now, I think scale is going to be the biggest challenge, and to illustrate that, I'll just show you a bit of a comparison between the Lego cars and the Scalexbric cars. You'll very quickly see the difference in scales when we have a close look at them. So we'll cut to that now. So first up, we've got Brand Supra. So I think Lego have done a very good job colour matching this actually. I'd say there's probably only maybe a shade in it, but I think they've done a bang up job with this. Now we'll cut to the Dom's Charger. So instantly these two, they're not too dissimilar in size. You can see where the Lego ones had to be a bit more caricaturish because that's just the nature of it. But it does make me feel like I'm in a good position to start this mock because, well, I've already got the cars now, so I can recreate this hot lap set using these two cars. All I've got to do is figure out the track and the propulsion. So getting the track right is making me scratch my head a little bit because the Scalexbric set as it is measures 140 centimeters by 210 centimeters. Now, if I want to take this to a convention, that's quite a lot of space, and I think the Lego version is only going to end up being bigger for reasons that we'll probably encounter, and I'll detail as we go through this build. So what I'll do now is I will cut to us figuring out what the scale of this is going to look like. So you join me in Studio Annex B, aka my guest bedroom. So to help answer that question, I treated myself to this. Now, I've not had a Scalexbric set in probably 20 years, but when I saw this, I couldn't help myself. And then when the Supra came along a couple of days ago, I thought, well, that gives me a great idea for a mock. Although, I may have bitten off more than I can chew, but I think we're going to find out. So straight off the bat, we can see that the Lego train track that I'm going to use it's actually a pretty good match for the outer radius of the track, albeit a centimetre or two short there. But that's as tight as the turn radius can get, so if I move it inbound we can see how that's going to blow out the size of the track, because then the outer radius is going to have to come out accordingly. So I think we're going to be probably another foot in each of those directions, so probably another 30-40 centimetres. This is going to get to be a big build. So after a bit of trial and error, I think I've managed to figure out how to do the outer loop. I've been using these flexible track pieces that Lego uses to try and smooth out the curve a little bit. Now, I've got absolutely no idea what impact this is going to have on how the cars will go around, but we're going to find out and you're going to see firsthand. So after a lot of fiddling with train track, I think I've now got the footprint. So it's gone considerably bigger than the Scalexbric footprint was, just to try and get any kind of alignment between, you know, the two lanes. I'm not entirely happy with it, and I do question how well it's going to fit to a Lego grid, but I guess we're going to find out. So this is now 2.5 meters wide at its widest parts by 1.5 meters from front to back. So yeah, if this is going anywhere, I'm going to have to try and figure out how to modularize it, which I think, I mean, it looks like it's all going to be off grid, so it's going to be easier said than done. But I'm very happy I've got a footprint now, and this is more than I had this morning. So because I want this mock to actually function, how do you do that? How do you replicate that with Lego cars? I mean, if I look at the size of this, it's not tiny, but Lego motors are massive. How do you retrofit that into something like this without completely destroying the shape of it? To illustrate the point, I've got one of Lego's older trains here. Now, if I bring in the engine unit, look at the size of that. That's an absolute unit. There's no way that you could take the battery, the powered wheels out of that, and retrofit it into this somehow without it just looking like a complete hodgepodge. But I do think there might be a way to use some of this. So I'm going to take this apart. I'm going to pull the motor, the driven wheels and the receiver out of it. And I'm going to see if I can do something halfway between the two, because this would look ridiculous pulling a car behind it or pushing it or whatever that would look like. But I think there might be a different way of doing it. So I'll take this apart now and we'll join back up again in a couple of minutes. So now I've got the motor functions out of the train. It's still an absolute beast of an assembly compared with one of the cars. I mean, there's the footprint of it just isn't even remotely compatible. The wheels are too narrow. I mean, you could extend that with a Technic pin, but how you'd keep that steady, I'm not entirely sure. But an extra challenge that I'm giving myself, and maybe it's unfair at this time, but we'll see, is I want to keep the cars as close to original as possible so that they could be potentially hot swapped for any Speed Champions car. So how do I create a modular system that supports that without having to extensively tear these apart and build them up from scratch again? I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and create some kind of, I'll call it a sled for lack of a better name, but something like this that will go around the track. It will just support its own functions, and maybe if I can find a way to streamline the rig a bit, so perhaps this might sit behind and the receiver could go on top. Keep it as low profile as I possibly can, and then there might be some way of potentially having the car travel above it. So all of this would have to be brick built and concealed with plate or whatever have you as it goes along. But I think that might be the crux of the idea there. So I think this might have legs. We'll see. So I'm going to prototype a sled and I'll come back to you. I think as I get more confident with building and prototyping, I'll do it as we're recording, but based on where I'm at the moment, this video would be about 7 hours long, so I'll spare you some of that agony and I'll come back to you in a second. So this is what I've thrown together very quickly. All I've done is I've taken the powered wheel assembly from the train and I've just very crudely mounted the receiver on the front of it and created a sort of very basic trailer for the battery pack. Now this is just to see if the components will make it around the loop that I've created and up a bit of a gradient. And what I'm also going to try and do is just very crudely see if my idea works of using it as a sled under the car. So I'm going to see if I can just create some brick built pillars just to mount the car above and then see how this sled does with the weight of the car on top of it. So bear with me, I'll do that, and then if all being well, I will see you at the track. Test sled is ready. So did you ever see a more ridiculous looking thing in your life? Look at this Frankenstein contraption. Right, well, let's take it over to the track and see how it gets on. So the sled's on the track, so you'll see that if I zoom in, and get my fingers in the shop. I've propped up the track with a couple of boxes at various places because the flyover section, I think I've judged that right, but we'll see. So I think, if I'm honest, there's just going to be a fairly underwhelming crash in a moment. But here we go. This is the first time that I'm seeing it and the first time that you're seeing it. So here we go. And it helps if I go in the right direction. I'm going to do this first lap slowly just to see. Well, okay, so if it didn't stand up to that speed, then it's certainly not going to stand up to any faster. So back to the drawing board. All right, so after that underwhelming first attempt, we're back with Mark II. So this time I threw the original idea out the window, had a word with myself, and what I've done is I've used one of these old sort of train chassis plates, I guess you'd call it, and I've made a sled out of that. So what we'll do is we'll repeat the experiment and yeah, let's find out which corner it falls off at. Bit more power to get it across the gradient. Okay, so I need to support the track better. Round 3. Alright, so we're back for the third attempt, so yeah, let's see what's going to happen. I've now propped it up with more boxes, and it looks ridiculous, and you're probably thinking, yeah, what a Burke, but, well, you know, you've got to try these things. So, off we go, give it a bit more juice to try and get up the ramp. Okay, yeah, so the weight of it tipped it over, which is sort of to be expected, but I think I might be able to compensate for that in time. What I probably need to do now is I'll take the charger off the top of it, have it just as a sled, and see if that can hurtle round. So give me a second and we'll come back. And it was going so well. Alright, so much fiddling later, we're ready to have another go. This is probably test about 700 at this point. I've now shored up anywhere I could imagine that there would be a dip in the track, so let's see. If anything, this is useful to understand what the terrain's going to have to look like to support this, but yeah, off we go. We'll go in the right direction, that might help. I think we've derailed at the back end. So I can get it to trundle along at a okay pace, but I would like the cars to really be able to sort of really bang it around the track, so it might be that that only becomes possible when I've fully built the mock. I think there's enough here to go on to continue, but I do feel like I've underestimated the amount of engineering challenges that are going to exist in this, so I am going to call it at that for today, and then hopefully in a week or so's time, when I've had a bit of chance to work on it, then I'll come back to you with an update. I do work full time, so it's not always easy. Hey Bella. Oh, you said hello to everybody. Well, yeah, and on that note, we'll see you next time.